Hey everyone, and welcome. So, you're dreaming of a tiny home in Arizona, right? It is an awesome, incredible dream. But, there's often one big hurdle standing in the way: zoning laws. So today, we're going to crack the code and figure out exactly how you can make that tiny home dream a reality.
I bet you've spent hours online scrolling through those gorgeous designs, picturing the freedom, the simplicity. But here's the thing, our research shows the single biggest challenge isn't actually picking out the perfect home.
That's it right there. The real quest is figuring out where on earth you're allowed to park it. All those questions like, can I put this in my parents' backyard? Or is my county even okay with this? Those are the things that can stop this amazing dream in its tracks. And that is exactly the puzzle we're going to solve together today. Okay, first stop on our journey, the big picture. Before we get into specific neighborhoods or towns, we have to understand the basic rules of the game for tiny living across the whole state of Arizona.
And let's get right to the big question. Are tiny homes legal in Arizona? The answer is yes, absolutely. You can breathe a sigh of relief. But, and this is a really big but, it's not quite that simple. There's a catch.
And here's where things get a little complicated. See, there isn't one single law for the entire state. Instead, every single city and county gets to make its own rules. This means your tiny home might be called an accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, or it could be classified as an RV, or even a mobile home. And each one of those labels comes with its own separate rulebook, and sometimes some pretty frustrating minimum square footage requirements. To really see just how different these rules can be, let's zoom in on Maricopa County. This is where you can see how the regulations can change dramatically, literally from one side of the street to the other.
And this table just makes it crystal clear. I mean, look at the difference. In Goodyear, you pretty much get a green light. But drive a few miles over to Scottsdale, and it can be a hard no, mostly because of HOAs. You've got Phoenix and Mesa kind of in the middle with some limits. This patchwork of rules proves that your specific location is absolutely everything.
So if you only take one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this: do your homework. Before you fall in love with a piece of land, and definitely before you buy that tiny home, you have got to confirm the specific codes for that exact city, that exact neighborhood.
Okay, so we get it. The rules can be a maze. So now let's talk strategy. This is all about your roadmap, the 4 main paths you can actually take to place your tiny home.
First up, the backyard ADU. Perfect for adding space on a property you already have, maybe for family or even rental income. Second, if your tiny home is on wheels, RV parks are a great option because all the hookups are ready to go. Third, and this is so cool, you've got these dedicated tiny home villages popping up, which offer a real sense of community. And finally, you can always go rural. You'll often find the most freedom out there, but you'll be in charge of figuring out all your own utilities.
So, you know the rules, you know your options. Now, you need an action plan. Let's get practical.
Here it is, your essential pre-purchase checklist. First, verify the exact zoning for your land. Second, check those minimum square footage rules. Third, get a handle on all the permits you're going to need: foundations, septic, electrical, the whole shebang. And finally, and I really can't say this enough, check the HOA rules first. This one can be the ultimate deal breaker. Which brings us right to our next section: conquering those final hurdles. Let's talk about the 2 things that can feel the most intimidating: homeowners associations and that whole permitting process. And look, it's not just my opinion. The source material is super clear on this, saying that HOAs are the single biggest barrier to placing a tiny home. And that's because they operate under a completely different set of rules than the city does. Think of it like this: city zoning tells you what's legally allowed. It sets the floor. But the HOA's rules, their CC&Rs, that's a private contract. It defines what's contractually forbidden in your neighborhood. And they can, and very often do, impose much stricter rules that completely override what the city allows. So even if the city says yes, your HOA can still say no.
And what about the permit process? I know it can look a little daunting, but really, just think of it as a roadmap. You start with zoning, you get your utilities and septic sorted out, you schedule the inspections, and finally, the finish line, you get that glorious certificate of occupancy. It's a step-by-step journey, and it is totally doable.
So after navigating all of these rules, what does the future hold? Well, the good news is the path is getting clearer. The trend is overwhelmingly positive for this incredible housing alternative.
So who's leading the charge in Arizona? Right now, all eyes are on Tucson.
It's basically wearing the crown as the #1 most tiny home-friendly city in the state, and it's proving what's possible when a community really gets behind this movement.
And this change isn't just happening in Tucson. The huge demand for affordable, flexible housing is pushing other major cities, Phoenix included, to adapt. They're starting to relax their old rules and make it easier to build things like backyard ADUs. This is a movement being driven by a real-world need.
So that leaves us with the final big question. As Arizona's cities keep adapting to this call for innovative and affordable housing, is this tiny home dream, this quest for a simpler, more sustainable life, finally going to move from being a niche alternative to an everyday reality for thousands of people? The momentum is building, and the future of tiny living in Arizona looks brighter than ever.